All right, so we're diving deep today
Mhm.
into the allegations against Sean Diddy Combs.
Yeah. It's
And
P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, Puffy.
all the names, right?
I mean, he's got a lot of them.
So we've got a whole bunch of sources here. Lawsuits, public statements,
Articles. Yeah, we did a lot of research for this one.
really trying to get to the bottom of what's going on.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. And it's heavy stuff. Sexual misconduct, assault, even racketeering.
Yeah. Serious stuff.
But our goal here is to present it all objectively.
Like, just lay it all out.
So you can really understand the situation as it stands.
Exactly. We're not here to, make judgments.
Right.
Just present the information.
Right. So to start, let's go back to 2017. Cindy Rueda,
Right.
Combs' personal chef at the time, files a lawsuit,
Ooh, yeah.
alleges sexual harassment and retaliation. Now, that case was settled in 2019.
Settled, which, as we know,
Doesn't necessarily mean...
guilt, admission of guilt.
No, it doesn't. So we don't know all the details of that settlement.
It happens a lot, though,
Yeah,
for lots of reasons.
sure. Saving money on a trial, trying to protect a reputation.
Absolutely.
But still...
It does make you wonder.
It really does. Then things seem to quiet down for a while until November 2023. Cassie Ventura, Combs' long-term partner, files her own lawsuit.
This one was a bombshell.
And this one's got some really heavy stuff.
Rape, sex trafficking.
Physical abuse. She even claims he was involved in blowing up
You said it.
her then-boyfriend Kid Cuties' car.
It's all right there in the lawsuit.
Wild. Now, this one was settled and dismissed incredibly quickly,
Next day, practically.
which raises all sorts of questions about...
Dynamics for sure.
Right, like, was there really a fair resolution here?
It's hard to say a settlement that quick.
Especially with such serious allegations.
It makes you think, did she feel pressured to settle?
Maybe afraid to go up against someone with Combs' power and influence.
It's definitely a possibility. And sadly, it happens more often than you'd think.
Right. And then, in that same month, November 2023, we get 2 more lawsuits.
Oh, wow. So things are really heating up.
Alleging sexual assault and revenge porn.
That's rough.
One of these cases even goes back to the early 1990s.
90s, wow.
Supposedly involves the singer, Aaron Hall.
So this isn't a recent thing,
It seems like a whole bunch of accusations are starting to surface.
like a dam breaking.
Makes you wonder if Ventura's case maybe emboldened others to come forward.
Makes sense. Or maybe public perception is shifting. People feel more comfortable speaking out.
Yeah, it does feel like a turning point. Then in May 2024,
Oh, yeah, this is a big one.
CNN releases hotel surveillance footage from 2016
I remember this.
showing Combs physically assaulting Ventura.
The same incident mentioned in her lawsuit.
Exactly.
It's hard to watch.
Really damaging to his public image, to say the least.
Of course. Seeing is believing, right?
No amount of PR spin can erase that.
Definitely not. And you got to wonder.
What was his response?
Well, he did release an apology video on Instagram and Facebook.
Ah, the classic celebrity apology tour.
Expressing remorse, saying
Wow.
his actions were inexcusable. The timing is suspicious.
Years after the incident.
Right after that footage goes public.
Hard not to be cynical.
Makes you think it was more about damage control than genuine remorse.
And then there's the federal indictment from September 2024,
I'd almost forgotten about that.
alleging that Combs tried to bribe hotel staff after the assault.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that's...
Another layer.
Yeah, that's not looking good.
Trying to cover up the incident.
Sounds like it. Potentially silencing witnesses.
Makes you wonder how far this goes.
Deeper than we initially thought, maybe.
And just a month later,
This case just keeps unfolding.
October 2024, the Washington Post drops this bombshell report,
Bombshell's right.
revealing that a legal team is getting ready to file up to 120 more lawsuits
120. 120.
against Combs, alleging assaults spanning the 2000s and 2010s.
This is huge.
This is massive. We're not talking about a few isolated incidents anymore.
This is a pattern.
A potential system of abuse.
It's mind-blowing.
And it gets worse.
It gets worse.
These alleged assaults took place mainly in New York State, involving both men and women,
Oh, wow.
and a significant number of the victims minors.
Oh, that's awful. That changes things.
Absolutely. This is a whole new level of seriousness.
Raises the stakes.
Some of the details that are coming out are really disturbing.
Like what?
Some victims are saying they were drugged before the alleged assaults.
That's horrifying. That's premeditated, calculated.
It's just a predatory element to Combs' actions.
Absolutely chilling.
Others say they were offered hush money to keep quiet.
Trying to silence them,
Mhm.
protect his reputation.
Exactly. And one of the lawyers involved, Tony Busby,
yeah, I know him.
said publicly that the names of other individuals potentially involved in this whole thing would shock the public.
Oh, wow. So this might be bigger than just Combs.
A wider network of enablers.
Or co-conspirators.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion.
And who knows what we'll find at the center.
It's a lot to take in, and it's clear that this goes way beyond just one person's alleged actions.
We're talking about potential crimes with a devastating impact on a lot of lives.
We need to acknowledge that. Approach this topic with sensitivity,
Absolutely. Respect for the alleged victims is paramount.
Their stories deserve to be heard.
And we need to let the legal process play out fairly.
Exactly. Combs maintains his innocence, of course.
Of course.
But the sheer volume and severity of these allegations...
Yeah, it's hard to ignore.
It raises serious concerns. This is a complex situation that's still unfolding.
It really is.
We'll be right back to dive into the specific federal charges.
The ones that landed him in jail.
And what they could mean for Combs' future.
Can't wait to unpack that. This is getting intense.
Stay with us.
All right, so back to those 120 potential lawsuits.
Yeah, it's a staggering number.
Like, even if a fraction of those move forward.
It's got to be devastating for Combs, legally and for his reputation.
No doubt about it. It's not just individual incidents anymore. It's
a pattern, right.
Exactly. A potential system of abuse being brought to light.
And remember, these accusations are coming from all sorts of people.
Different backgrounds, different ages.
The Washington Post report specifically mentioned that about 25 of the potential plaintiffs
were minors
when this all allegedly happened.
That's just, I don't even know what to say.
It's heavy stuff. Really raises questions about power dynamics.
Oh, for sure. Were these individuals targeted because they were vulnerable?
Maybe less likely to speak up against someone like Combs?
It's a horrifying thought. And it adds a whole other dimension to these accusations.
Beyond just the individual acts?
It makes you wonder, were there people who knew what was going on?
But didn't say anything.
Right, like were they scared to come forward?
Or pressured to protect Combs?
This Tony Busby, the lawyer, he mentioned complicit bystanders.
Which is just as disturbing.
It suggests a culture of silence. Maybe even a conspiracy.
The Washington Post also said that some of these potential plaintiffs
had already reported these incidents
years ago to the police, to doctors.
Even to the FBI, they said.
Which raises even more questions.
Yeah, like what happened to those reports?
Why wasn't anything done?
It's like the system failed these people.
Or maybe it was rigged against them from the start.
It's hard not to think that way sometimes.
Especially when you see someone with Combs' wealth and influence.
Seemingly getting away with things for so long.
But maybe, just maybe,
this is the turning point.
All these potential lawsuits?
It could be a catalyst.
Encourage other victims to come forward.
There's power in numbers, you know.
It can break down that wall of fear and shame.
It can be really hard to speak out, especially against someone powerful.
But when you see others doing it,
it can give you the courage to share your own story.
Exactly. And maybe, just maybe,
this could lead to real change.
Not just in the music industry,
but in society as a whole.
It's about time we start holding people accountable.
No matter how rich or famous they are.
Their actions have consequences.
And victims deserve justice.
Absolutely. But while we're talking about the future,
we can't forget about the present.
Combs is facing some very real legal challenges right now.
Those federal charges are nothing to scoff at.
In September 2024, he was arrested and indicted in New York.
Racketeering, sex trafficking by force.
Transportation for purposes of prostitution.
We've moved from civil lawsuits to criminal charges.
This is the government saying he broke the law.
And they're seeking punishment.
He's currently in federal custody.
Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn.
And he's been denied bail 3 times.
Which tells you something right there.
The judge sees him as a potential flight risk.
Or a danger to the community.
And that racketeering charge, the RITO charge.
That's a big one.
Usually used for organized crime.
The government's saying he was part of a criminal enterprise.
A system of exploitation.
Not just individual acts.
And then the sex trafficking and prostitution charges?
They suggest he might have been involved in a network?
Maybe even moving people across state lines.
Some of the details from the potential lawsuits,
like the drugging, the hush money,
law fits,
could be used as evidence of coercion and manipulation.
Key elements of sex trafficking.
It's important to remember, though.
He's innocent until proven guilty.
Of course. He's denied any wrongdoing.
And he has every right to fight these charges in court.
But his situation doesn't look good.
Being held without bail, facing federal charges.
It's a tough spot to be in. His trial is set for May 5th, 2025.
So he's looking at a lot of time behind bars.
Even before a verdict is reached.
The outcome of this trial,
It could have huge implications.
not just for Combs,
But for the entire music industry.
this whole thing has started a conversation
About power and accountability.
the prevalence of abuse.
And it makes us think about our role in all this.
As consumers, as fans,
Do we hold these powerful figures accountable?
or do we look the other way?
It's a tough question.
But it's one we need to ask ourselves.
What can we do to support victims?
How can we create a culture where they feel safe to come forward?
These are important questions.
And we need to start finding answers.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener.
So many layers to this case.
So many questions still unanswered.
But one thing's for sure.
This is far from over.
We'll continue to follow this story.
And keep you updated.
Stay tuned.
All right, so let's dig into those federal charges against Combs.
The ones that landed him behind bars.
Exactly. We talked about all those potential lawsuits.
But these criminal charges are a whole different ballgame.
Right. This
Yeah.
is the government stepping in and saying, you broke the law.
And they're not messing around.
She was indicted back in September 2024, right?
Yep. Racketeering, sex trafficking by force.
Transportation for purposes of prostitution.
Serious stuff.
And it suggests a pattern, not just isolated incidents.
Exactly. That racketeering charge, RACO, that's usually reserved for organized crime.
So they're saying he was part of a larger criminal enterprise.
A whole system of exploitation.
And those other charges, the sex trafficking, the prostitution,
They paint a pretty clear picture.
of someone using their power and influence to exploit others.
And some of the details we've heard from potential victims,
The drugging, the hush money,
it all seems to support these charges.
coercion, manipulation, all key elements of sex trafficking.
And the fact that he's being held without bail,
3 times he's been denied.
that speaks volumes.
The judge clearly sees him as a flight risk or a danger,
And this case has moved quickly.
which isn't surprising given all the attention it's getting.
But it's important to remember he's innocent until proven guilty.
Of course, he's denied everything, says he'll fight these charges.
And he has the right to a fair trial.
But the evidence against him seems pretty damning.
It's hard to see how he walks away from this unscathed.
Even if he's acquitted, his reputation is probably ruined.
This whole thing raises some really uncomfortable questions.
About the music industry, about celebrity culture.
About power and how it can be abused.
It makes you wonder how many other victims are out there.
How many stories have been silenced?
And what can we do to prevent this from happening again?
It's time to start holding people accountable.
No matter how famous or powerful they are,
We need to create a culture where victims feel safe to speak out.
and where perpetrators are brought to justice.
This deep dive has been a lot to process,
So much information, so many twists and turns.
but hopefully it sparks some important conversations.
About abuse, about power, about our collective responsibility.
This case is far from over.
But one thing's for certain,
This is a turning point.
we can't ignore these issues anymore
We have to face them head on,
and work towards a better future.
where everyone feels safe and respected,
That's the goal, and we'll keep digging for the truth.
and keep you informed every step of the way.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.